There are places on this planet that simply don't make sense. Ancient structures hidden where no civilization should have survived, underground cities buried beneath the earth, giant stone fortresses standing above violent seas, and ruins so old they rewrite everything we thought we knew about history. These aren't legends, they're real, excavated by archaeologists, photographed by explorers, measured by historians, and still incredibly difficult to explain. If mysteries like this fascinate you, you're not alone. Subscribe if you haven't already, leave a like to support this journey into the unknown, and comment below what time it is for you right now and where are you watching from tonight. Take a breath, settle in. Because tonight we follow the fading trail of lost civilizations, ancient megastructures, and forgotten worlds history almost erased forever. The fortress city built inside a volcano. Beneath the surface of Turkey, hidden inside soft volcanic rock far below the earth, there exists an underground city so enormous that thousands of people once vanished inside it completely. Entire neighborhoods carved beneath the ground, hidden tunnels stretching through darkness, massive stone doors sealing passageways from invaders, and deep below the surface, a lost fortress city built inside the remains of an ancient volcanic landscape. The place is known as Derinkuyu, and even today, it remains one of the most astonishing underground structures ever discovered on Earth. Because this was not simply a cave, it was an entire civilization hidden beneath the world above. Derinkuyu lies in the Cappadocia region of central Turkey. The landscape already feels unusual. Towering rock formations rise across valleys shaped by volcanic eruptions millions of years ago. Soft volcanic stone covers the region, allowing ancient people to carve directly into the earth itself. Homes, churches, storage rooms, entire hidden worlds beneath the surface. But nothing compared to Derinkuyu. The underground city remained largely forgotten until the modern era. According to popular accounts, the discovery happened accidentally when a resident renovating a house uncovered a hidden passage behind a wall. Behind it lay another tunnel, then another chamber, then corridors descending deeper and deeper beneath the earth. Eventually, archaeologists realized they had uncovered one of the largest underground cities ever found. The scale felt impossible immediately. Derinkuyu descends roughly 18 levels underground. Ancient tunnels connect living quarters, food storage rooms, wells, ventilation shafts, chapels, workshops, and gathering spaces hidden deep beneath the surface. Historians believe as many as 20,000 people may once have sheltered there together, along with animals and supplies. The city functioned almost like a hidden underground fortress, and because the volcanic rock remained relatively soft yet stable, ancient builders expanded the tunnels over centuries into a vast subterranean labyrinth. The atmosphere underground feels deeply unsettling, especially the deeper visitors descend. Narrow tunnels force people to bend through darkness. Cold air moves silently through hidden ventilation shafts. Stone walls close tightly around passageways lit only by artificial light. And everywhere, there is the overwhelming realization that thousands of tons of earth press above the chambers. The defensive systems deepen the mystery enormously. Huge circular stone doors could roll into place, sealing tunnels from within. Some weighed hundreds of pounds. Defenders could trap invaders inside narrow passageways while remaining protected underground. Certain tunnels were intentionally built extremely tight, forcing attackers to move single file through darkness. The city was designed for survival during siege and invasion. Historians believe Derinkuyu expanded gradually during periods of war, instability, and religious persecution. Communities may have hidden underground while armies crossed the surface world above. The engineering itself feels astonishing emotionally. Ventilation shafts carried fresh air through the underground levels. Water systems reached deep beneath the city. Food storage chambers preserved supplies for long periods. Ancient builders understood underground planning with extraordinary sophistication long before modern technology existed. Even today, sections of the city remain remarkably breathable, despite descending far below the surface. The volcanic origins of the landscape made everything possible. Millions of years earlier, volcanic eruptions covered Cappadocia in thick layers of ash that hardened into soft stone called tuff. That rock could be carved using ancient tools while remaining structurally stable enough to create large underground chambers. Nature itself unknowingly prepared the region for subterranean civilizations long before humans arrived. The emotional effect of Derinkuyu feels haunting, especially imagining ordinary life unfolding beneath the earth. Families sleeping underground while danger moved across the surface, children growing up inside tunnels hidden from sunlight, entire communities surviving invisibly below the volcanic landscape above. The atmosphere deepens because large sections of Derinkuyu still remain unexplored or inaccessible. Collapsed tunnels block certain areas, hidden chambers may continue deeper beneath known levels, and because Cappadocia contains multiple underground cities connected across the region, researchers suspect even larger networks may still exist beneath the earth. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believe Derinkuyu was originally built by a lost prehistoric civilization before recorded history began. Others imagine the underground city connected to ancient myths about hidden worlds beneath the earth. A few even claim the tunnels were designed to survive a global catastrophe or unknown ancient disaster. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits Derinkuyu remains extraordinary. Very few ancient structures anywhere in the world compare to its scale and complexity underground. Perhaps that is what makes the city feel so haunting. Not treasure, not supernatural legends, but the realization that human beings once disappeared beneath the earth entirely, creating hidden civilizations inside volcanic stone while the ordinary world continued above them. A fortress city beneath the surface, an underground world carved into ancient volcanic rock. And somewhere beneath the valleys of Cappadocia, the hidden city of Derinkuyu still stretches through darkness exactly where forgotten builders carved it long ago. The ancient mountain filled with hidden tombs, hidden deep within the deserts of Jordan, surrounded by towering red cliffs and narrow stone canyons. There exists an ancient city carved directly into the mountains themselves. Gigantic tombs rise from the rock like forgotten palaces. Massive stairways disappear into shadow. Entire facades emerge suddenly from the stone beneath burning desert skies. And hidden inside the mountain walls, generations of the dead were sealed within chambers untouched by sunlight for thousands of years. The place is known as Petra, and even today, the royal tombs of Petra remain some of the most mysterious and haunting structures ever carved by human hands. Because this was not simply a city. It was a mountain transformed into a kingdom of the dead. Petra lies in southern Jordan, hidden among rugged desert valleys and sandstone cliffs. The landscape feels unreal immediately. Red and orange stone glows beneath the sun. Narrow canyons twist through the mountains like giant cracks in the earth. And hidden beyond those stone passages, entire monuments suddenly appear carved directly into the cliffs themselves. The city was built by the Nabateans, an ancient Arab civilization that flourished more than 2,000 years ago, controlling major trade routes across the desert. Caravans carrying incense, spices, silk, and precious goods passed through Petra, connecting Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world. The city became wealthy beyond imagination, and the Nabateans transformed the surrounding mountains into architecture itself. But among all the temples, pathways, and monuments of Petra, the royal tombs remain the most unsettling. Gigantic burial facades rise high above the valley walls, massive columns, stairways, and entrances carved directly into solid stone. The scale feels overwhelming emotionally, especially because the tombs appear less like graves and more like abandoned palaces frozen within the cliffs. The most famous structures stand along what archaeologists call the royal tombs area: the urn tomb, the silk tomb, the Corinthian tomb, the palace tomb, each carved directly into towering sandstone mountainsides with astonishing precision. The colours themselves deepen the mystery enormously. Natural mineral patterns flow through the rock, creating swirling red, gold, purple, and black textures across the tomb walls. At sunset, the facades almost appear alive beneath shifting light. The interiors feel completely different. Outside, the tombs appear grand and monumental. Inside, silence dominates everything. Large empty chambers stretch into darkness beyond the entrances. Stone walls absorb sound completely. And because many tombs were looted centuries ago, the spaces now feel abandoned and hollow, like echoes of forgotten funerals from another civilization. Historians believe Petra's elite rulers and powerful families were buried within these mountain tombs. The Nabateans placed enormous importance on death, memory, and monumentality. carving tombs high into the cliffs ensured the dead remained visible above the city forever, watching silently over the desert below. The engineering itself feels extraordinary. Ancient workers carved the facades from top to bottom directly into vertical mountain walls. One mistake could destroy entire sections permanently. Yet the symmetry and detail remain astonishing even after thousands of years of erosion. The atmosphere surrounding Petra deepens the mystery even further, especially when approaching through the sick, a narrow canyon passage twisting through towering rock walls before suddenly revealing the ancient city beyond. For ancient travellers, the experience must have felt almost supernatural, a hidden civilization emerging from inside the mountains themselves. The royal tombs also became connected to legends over centuries. Local stories spoke of hidden treasure, buried deep within sealed chambers beyond the visible tombs. Some believed secret tunnels stretched beneath Petra, connecting hidden burial vaults beneath the mountains. Others imagined forgotten kings still resting untouched somewhere inside unexplored chambers sealed by rockfalls and time. Because despite centuries of exploration, much of Petra still remains buried beneath sand and stone even today. The desert continues hiding sections of the ancient city. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed Petra concealed lost knowledge from civilizations older than the Nabateans themselves. Others imagined hidden chambers beneath the royal tombs, storing sacred artifacts and records lost to history. A few even claimed the mountain city aligned with celestial events and ancient astronomical systems hidden within the desert landscape. Most historians reject those ideas completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Petra still contains enormous unanswered questions. New tombs, chambers and structures continue emerging from beneath the desert during excavations. The city is far larger than many people realize. The emotional power of Petra comes partly from how perfectly human architecture merged with nature itself. The Nabateans did not conquer the mountains. They entered them, carved into them, turned cliffs into monuments and stone into memory. And perhaps that is what makes the royal tombs feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire civilizations once transformed mountains into cities for both the living and the dead, a kingdom hidden inside stone, tombs watching silently above the desert, and somewhere within the red cliffs of Petra, the ancient royal chambers still remain carved into the mountain exactly where forgotten rulers were sealed thousands of years ago. The desert fortress larger than modern cities hidden deep within the deserts of Turkmenistan, beyond endless plains of dust and heat. There once stood a city so enormous that ancient travellers believed it could never truly disappear. Massive fortress walls stretched across the horizon. Towering gates guarded endless streets. Caravans carrying silk, gold, spices and treasure crossed the desert to reach its markets. And hidden behind the walls, one of the greatest cities on earth flourished in the middle of nowhere. The place was known as Merv, and even today, its abandoned ruins remain among the largest and most haunting lost cities in human history. Because this was not simply a desert settlement. It was a civilization larger than many modern cities. Merv lies in present-day Turkmenistan along the ancient Silk Road routes, connecting Asia, Persia, and the Mediterranean world. The landscape feels harsh and endless. Dry winds move constantly across open desert plains. The sun burns against cracked earth beneath enormous skies, and scattered across the emptiness, giant ruined walls still rise from the sand like fragments of another age. The scale becomes overwhelming immediately. Ancient Merv covered enormous territory across multiple fortified cities built over centuries. Walls stretched for miles. Entire districts disappeared beneath desert silence. And at its height, historians believe Merv may have become one of the largest cities on Earth during the medieval Islamic world. Some estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of people once lived there. A giant civilization hidden in the middle of the desert itself. The city survived under many empires across history. Persians, Greeks after Alexander the Great, Parthians, Sassanids, Islamic dynasties. Each civilization expanded the city, adding new fortresses, palaces, mosques, markets and neighbourhoods atop older ruins. Over time, Merv became less like a single city, and more like an entire world layered across centuries. The fortress sections deepened the mystery enormously. Gigantic mud brick walls still surround parts of the ancient city, exactly where defenders once guarded against invasion. Massive gates opened into crowded streets now buried beneath sand. Watchtowers overlooked the desert stretching endlessly beyond the horizon. Ancient builders understood survival. They depended completely on defence and control of trade routes. Because whoever controlled Merv controlled one of the most important crossroads of the Silk Road world. The atmosphere surrounding the ruins feels haunting beyond words, especially during sunset. The desert glows deep red beneath fading light. Wind moves through broken walls and abandoned streets. And because the city stands largely isolated from modern civilization, silence dominates everything. The abandoned scale creates a strange emotional effect. You realise entire generations once lived, traded, ruled, worshipped, and died there, while today almost nothing remains except dust and ruined walls beneath the sky. The city also became famous for knowledge and culture. Ancient libraries of scholars, astronomers, poets, and merchants filled Merv during its golden age. Some historians believe the city rivaled Baghdad and other great capitals of the Islamic world for wealth and influence during certain periods. Water systems carried life into the desert through canals and irrigation. Gardens flourished where modern visitors now see emptiness. That contrast feels almost impossible emotionally. A thriving metropolis transformed into ruins swallowed by sand, but eventually, catastrophe arrived. In the 13th century, Mongol armies under Genghis Khan swept across Central Asia. Historical accounts describe the destruction of Merv as one of the greatest massacres in medieval history. Entire populations slaughtered, districts burned, the city devastated almost beyond recovery. Whether the numbers were exaggerated or not, something terrible unquestionably happened there. Afterward, Merv slowly declined into silence. Trade routes shifted, empires changed, and the giant desert city gradually disappeared beneath dust and time. The abandoned ruins became known by different names across the centuries: Yarkala, Sultan Kala. Ancient fortress cities standing side by side across the desert representing different eras of Merv's long history. The scale remains astonishing even today. Archaeologists continue uncovering new structures buried beneath the sands: palaces, workshops, defensive systems, entire districts still waiting beneath the earth. Large portions of the ancient city remain only partially explored. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden treasure from lost Silk Road kingdoms still remains buried somewhere beneath the ruins untouched since the Mongol invasion. Others imagined secret underground chambers preserving ancient manuscripts and forgotten knowledge from civilizations erased by war. A few even claimed Merv concealed traces of prehistoric cultures older than recorded history buried beneath the later city itself. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits Merv remains one of the greatest lost cities ever built. The emotional power of the site comes partly from scale. Modern people rarely imagine ancient civilizations operating on such enormous levels deep within hostile deserts. But Merv proves they did, a giant urban world rising from emptiness itself. And perhaps that is what makes the ruins feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire human worlds can vanish almost completely while the desert continues silently around them. The giant monolith, carved like a machine. Hidden in the hills of Japan, surrounded by forests, shrines, and silent stone pathways, there rests a giant monolith so precise and so strange that many people refuse to believe it was carved by ancient hands alone. A massive block of stone weighing hundreds of tons, sharp geometric cuts running across its surface, perfectly flat sections resembling machine work. And beneath the monolith, a mysterious pool of water reflecting the giant stone like a mirror from another age. The place is known as Ishino-Hoden. And even today, nobody fully understands why this enormous stone monument was created, or how ancient people shaped something so impossibly precise. Ishino-Hoden lies in Hyogo Prefecture, Japan. The landscape feels peaceful at first. Trees move softly in the wind, stone lanterns line ancient shrine paths, and hidden among the hills, the giant monolith suddenly appears suspended above the ground like something abandoned from another civilization entirely. The scale becomes overwhelming immediately. The stone measures roughly 19 feet high and nearly 20 feet wide. Historians estimate it weighs more than 500 tons, yet despite its enormous mass, sections of the monolith appear carved with astonishing smoothness and symmetry. Straight lines, angular cuts, flat surfaces that almost resemble industrial shaping rather than ancient stonework. That single detail transformed Ishino-Hoden into one of Japan's greatest archaeological mysteries. The monolith itself sits partially above a water-filled basin, causing the lower section to appear as though it floats. The reflection deepens the strange atmosphere enormously, especially during quiet mornings when mist moves through the surrounding shrine grounds. The stone almost seems detached from ordinary reality, as though placed there intentionally by forces modern people no longer understand. The site has been sacred for centuries. Ishino-Hoden remains connected to the nearby Oshiko shrine, where local traditions honour the mysterious stone as something spiritually important. Ancient Japanese beliefs often viewed unusual rocks and mountains as sacred objects inhabited by spiritual forces known as kami. Natural formations carried presence and power, but Ishino-Hoden feels different from ordinary sacred stones, because it does not look entirely natural. The carving appears deliberate, engineered, almost unfinished somehow. That uncertainty fuels endless speculation even today. One of the greatest mysteries involves the monolith's purpose. Nobody knows exactly why it was carved. Some researchers believe it may have been part of an unfinished tomb or ancient quarry project abandoned long ago. Others suggest ceremonial or religious significance connected to local spiritual traditions, but no definitive explanation survives. No written records clearly describe its construction. No historical documents fully explain who created it or why. Only the stone remains, silent beneath centuries of mystery. The atmosphere surrounding Ishino-Hoden feels deeply unusual, especially standing close to the surface. The cuts across the stone appear almost unnaturally clean. Human beings instinctively associate such precision with machinery and modern tools, yet the monument dates back to ancient periods long before industrial technology existed. The emotional effect becomes unsettling, because part of the mind struggles accepting that ancient people shaped something so massive with primitive tools alone. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed Ishino-Hoden was created by a lost advanced civilization possessing forgotten stone-cutting technology. Others imagined the monolith formed part of a larger hidden structure, buried beneath the surrounding hills. A few even claimed extraterrestrials shaped the stone because the precision resembled machine manufacturing beyond ancient capability. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the monolith remains extraordinary. The sheer labour alone required immense organisation, planning and engineering knowledge. Ancient workers removed huge quantities of surrounding rock while preserving the massive central stone with remarkable accuracy. And perhaps most mysterious of all, the monolith appears partially unfinished, as though ancient builders suddenly stopped work and never returned. That detail creates endless questions. Why abandon such an enormous project? What was it meant to become? The surrounding shrine deepens the emotional atmosphere further. Quiet forest paths, ancient ritual spaces, water reflecting the stone beneath shifting light. The environment transforms the monolith into something almost spiritual beyond archaeology itself. A giant silent object waiting beneath the trees while centuries pass around it. Perhaps that is what makes Ishino-Hoden feel so haunting. Not because it proves supernatural theories, but because it reveals how little modern civilization sometimes understands about ancient human ambition. People thousands of years ago moved mountains, carved impossible monuments, created sacred structures capable of surviving beyond memory itself, and somewhere within the quiet hills of Japan, the giant monolith of Ishino-Hoden still rests above the water exactly where ancient builders shaped it long ago, silent beneath stone, shadow, and the endless mystery of why it was ever carved at all. The underground temple beneath a small island. Beneath the streets of a small island in the Mediterranean, hidden far below ordinary houses and sunlight, there exists an underground temple so ancient and so mysterious that even today archaeologists struggle to fully explain why it was built. Stone chambers descend deep beneath the earth. Massive carved walls curve through darkness like the inside of a forgotten world. Ancient red symbols still remain painted across hidden ceilings. and somewhere within the underground silence, generations of the dead were once carried into chambers untouched by daylight. The place is known as the Hypogeum of Malta, and even today, it remains one of the strangest and most unsettling prehistoric structures ever discovered on Earth. Because this was not simply a tomb. It was an entire underground world carved beneath a tiny island thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt. The Hypogeum lies on the island of Malta in the central Mediterranean Sea. The island itself feels ancient. Stone temples older than many famous civilizations still rise across the landscape. Narrow streets pass above buried ruins hidden beneath modern towns, and beneath one ordinary neighbourhood, workers accidentally uncovered something extraordinary during construction in the early 20th century. At first, the discovery seemed small, a hidden cavity beneath the ground. But as excavations continued, archaeologists realised they had uncovered a vast underground complex carved directly into limestone beneath the island itself. The scale felt impossible immediately. The Hypogeum descends through multiple underground levels connected by stairways, tunnels, and chambers carved entirely by hand. No natural caves existed there originally. Ancient builders shaped the entire structure from solid rock roughly 5,000 years ago using primitive tools. That reality alone stunned researchers, because the construction required enormous planning, labour, and engineering long before advanced technology existed. The atmosphere underground feels deeply unsettling, especially the deeper visitors descend. The air becomes cool and silent beneath the earth. Stone walls curve around narrow corridors disappearing into shadow, and because the chambers were carved with deliberate symmetry and design, the underground complex feels strangely alive emotionally, not random, intentional, purposeful. The chambers themselves deepen the mystery enormously. Some resemble temples, others burial spaces. Massive rounded rooms branch outward from central passageways beneath the earth. Historians believe the Hypogeum served both ceremonial and funerary purposes for the prehistoric civilization that built it. Thousands of human remains were discovered inside the complex during excavation, entire generations buried beneath the island over centuries. But perhaps the strangest chamber of all became known as the Oracle Room. The room possesses unusual acoustic properties. A deep human voice spoken inside resonates powerfully through the underground chambers, causing vibrations throughout the structure itself. Even today, the effect feels eerie. Sound moves through the stone with unnatural depth and force. Some researchers believe ancient priests may have intentionally designed the chamber for ritual ceremonies, involving voice, chanting, or altered states of consciousness. Standing there in darkness, hearing sound echo through chambers carved 5,000 years ago, feels almost supernatural emotionally. The walls also preserve traces of ancient red ochre paintings, spirals, symbols, patterns still visible after thousands of years underground. The meaning of the markings remains uncertain, yet they suggest the builders viewed the Hypogeum as something sacred far beyond ordinary burial space. The underground temple may have represented an entire spiritual world hidden beneath the surface. The isolation deepens the atmosphere enormously. No sunlight reaches the deepest chambers. Only stone, silence, and darkness surround the underground halls. Ancient people willingly entered those spaces carrying the dead deep beneath the earth itself. The emotional effect becomes difficult to explain, especially imagining ceremonies unfolding underground by torchlight thousands of years ago, voices echoing through the chambers, shadows moving across carved stone walls, entire rituals hidden beneath the island while ordinary life continued above. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed the Hypogeum connected to Atlantis, because Malta already contains ancient temples, older than many civilizations elsewhere. Others imagined hidden tunnels extending beneath the Mediterranean beyond the known chambers. A few even claimed the underground temple possessed unusual energies affecting sound, consciousness, and human perception. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the Hypogeum remains extraordinary. Very few prehistoric underground structures anywhere in the world compare to its complexity, age, and preservation. And perhaps most mysterious of all, the civilization responsible disappeared long ago, leaving almost no written explanation behind. Only stone remained. The emotional power of the Hypogeum comes partly from its invisibility. Entire worlds existed beneath the island while the surface above changed across thousands of years. Empires rose and collapsed. Wars crossed the Mediterranean. Civilizations vanished. Yet beneath the streets of Malta, the giant stairways carved into a canyon. Hidden deep within the deserts of Jordan, beyond towering canyon walls and ancient stone passageways, there are stairways carved directly into the mountains themselves. Endless steps rising through red cliffs beneath the burning sun, ancient pathways disappearing high above narrow canyons, and at the summit, forgotten tombs, temples, and sacred places hidden above the desert world below. The place is Petra, and even today, the giant stairways carved into its mountains remain among the most breathtaking and mysterious ancient pathways ever created. Because the people who built Petra did not simply live beside the cliffs, they climbed into them. Petra lies hidden among the rugged sandstone mountains of southern Jordan. The landscape feels unreal immediately. Red canyon walls tower hundreds of feet overhead. Narrow stone corridors twist through the desert like giant cracks in the earth. And hidden beyond those passageways, entire monuments suddenly emerge carved directly into the mountains themselves. The city belonged to the Nabateans, an ancient Arab civilization that flourished more than 2,000 years ago, controlling trade routes across the desert. Caravans carrying incense, spices, silk, and treasure passed through Petra, connecting Arabia with the Mediterranean world. The city became wealthy, powerful, and astonishingly advanced. But one of the most extraordinary features of Petra rises far above the famous temples and tombs below: the stairways. Thousands of stone steps carved directly into cliffs and canyon walls, leading upward toward hidden sacred places above the city. The scale becomes overwhelming emotionally. Some stairways climb steep mountainsides beneath open sky. Others disappear through narrow cliff passages, twisting into isolation high above the valleys. Ancient travellers crossed those steps under brutal desert heat, carrying goods, water, and ceremonial offerings upward through the stone world surrounding them. The most famous climb leads toward the monastery, known as Ad-Der, a gigantic monument carved high into the mountains above Petra. Reaching it requires ascending hundreds upon hundreds of ancient stone steps cut directly into the canyon itself. The journey feels almost spiritual. The higher visitors climb, the quieter the world below becomes. Wind moves through the cliffs. The desert stretches endlessly beyond the mountains, and eventually, the giant facade of the monastery appears suddenly from the stone itself. Massive, silent, almost impossible. The structure resembles a giant palace hidden above the canyon world below. Historians believe many of Petra's stairways connected ceremonial spaces, tombs, temples, and lookout points across the mountains. The Nabateans transformed the entire landscape into architecture. Cliffs became walls, mountains became monuments, and stairways became arteries connecting hidden sections of the ancient city through the desert stone. The atmosphere surrounding the stairways deepens the mystery enormously, especially during sunrise or evening. Shadows stretch across the canyon walls, the red stone glows beneath changing light, and because many pathways remain isolated from modern crowds, silence dominates the mountains. Standing alone upon those ancient steps creates a strange emotional effect. The feeling of moving through a forgotten civilization still hidden inside the rock itself. The engineering also feels astonishing. Ancient workers carved pathways directly into steep canyon walls, using primitive tools thousands of years ago. Some stairways remain remarkably intact despite centuries of erosion, earthquakes, and desert weather. Others partially collapsed into dangerous ledges and broken paths disappearing into the mountains. The city once contained an enormous network of elevated routes modern visitors still do not fully understand completely. Some led to ceremonial high places where ancient rituals unfolded above Petra. Others connected hidden tomb complexes carved deep into remote cliffs far from ordinary city life. The dead remained above the city, watching silently from the mountainsides. That detail gives Petra an unusually haunting atmosphere. The entire landscape feels alive with memory. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden stairways still lead toward undiscovered chambers and tombs buried high within the mountains beyond known sections of Petra. Others imagine secret ceremonial routes used only by priests and rulers during sacred rituals. A few even claimed the elevated pathways aligned with celestial events and ancient astronomical systems hidden within the canyon landscape. Most historians reject those ideas completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Petra remains far larger than many people realize. New chambers, tombs, and pathways continue emerging from beneath the desert during excavations. Large portions of the mountain city remain unexplored. Perhaps that is what makes the stairways of Petra feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that ancient people transformed entire mountains into a living city connected by paths climbing endlessly into stone and sky. A civilization hidden inside canyon walls, sacred stairways carved through the desert cliffs, a forgotten world rising above the sands beneath the endless Jordanian sun. Even today, the giant stairways of Petra still climb through the Red Mountains, exactly where Nabatean builders carved them more than 2,000 years ago, silent beneath shadow, stone, and the endless desert sky above the canyon world. The ancient megastructure lost in Ethiopia. High in the mountains of northern Ethiopia, surrounded by rocky valleys and silent hills, there stand the ruins of a forgotten temple, older than many of the world's most famous ancient monuments. Gigantic stone walls rise from the earth with astonishing precision. Massive blocks fit together so tightly that even today it feels impossible ancient builders shaped them by hand. And hidden among the ruins, traces remain of a civilization that vanished long before most people realized such kingdoms even existed. The place is known as Yeha, and even today, the ancient temple ruins of Yeha remain one of Africa's greatest forgotten mysteries. Because this was not simply a ruined building, it was the center of a lost civilization hidden high in the Ethiopian mountains. Yeha lies in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia. The landscape feels ancient immediately. Dry mountains stretch beneath enormous skies, stone villages cling to rocky hillsides, and rising unexpectedly from the earth, the ruins of the great temple of Yeha still stand after nearly 3,000 years. The structure feels enormous emotionally. Massive stone walls tower above the surrounding land, built from huge blocks carved and fitted together with extraordinary precision. No mortar holds the stones together, yet the walls remain standing after centuries of earthquakes, invasion, weather, and time. That single detail stunned archaeologists, because the engineering resembles monumental architecture from civilizations far beyond what many people expect from ancient East Africa. Historians believe Yeha flourished more than 2,700 years ago, long before the rise of the famous Ethiopian Empire, long before medieval kingdoms spread across the highlands. At its height, Yeha became the center of an advanced civilization connected to trade routes crossing the Red Sea into Arabia and beyond. The temple itself appears heavily influenced by South Arabian architecture, especially the ancient kingdom of Saba, the same civilization later associated with the legendary Queen of Sheba. That connection deepens the mystery enormously, because Yeha may preserve evidence of one of the earliest powerful kingdoms in the Horn of Africa, linked directly to ancient trade networks crossing deserts and seas thousands of years ago. The Great Temple dominates the site. Gigantic stone blocks form walls more than 40 feet high in places. Ancient builders shaped the stones with remarkable precision, fitting them together so tightly that gaps barely remain visible even now. The structure likely served religious and ceremonial purposes, connected to gods worshipped before Christianity or Islam reached the region. Standing beside the walls creates a strange emotional effect. The stones feel impossibly old, silent witnesses from a civilization mostly erased from memory. The atmosphere surrounding Yeha deepens the mystery further, especially during sunset. Golden light moves across the mountains while shadows gather around the ancient ruins. Wind moves softly between the stone walls, and because the site remains relatively isolated compared to many world-famous ruins, silence dominates everything. The temple almost feels abandoned outside ordinary history itself. Archaeologists also uncovered nearby tombs and underground burial structures connected to the ancient settlement. Long stone-lined shafts descend beneath the earth into burial chambers hidden below the hills. The dead of the Forgotten Kingdom were placed beneath the landscape surrounding the temple itself. That detail gives Yeha an unusually haunting atmosphere, a sacred city built above hidden worlds of the dead. The civilization responsible for Yeha remains partly mysterious even today. Written records survive only in fragments. Languages changed across centuries, kingdoms rose and collapsed around the region, and eventually, the ancient city declined, leaving only ruins beneath the Ethiopian mountains. Yet the temple endured, massive stone walls surviving while entire civilizations disappeared around them. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed Yeha preserved traces of Atlantis-like civilizations lost from official history. Others imagined hidden underground chambers and treasures still buried beneath the temple ruins, untouched for thousands of years. A few even claimed the site, connected directly to the biblical Queen of Sheba, and concealed sacred relics from the ancient world. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Yeha remains extraordinary. The scale and precision of the construction reveal a sophisticated civilization many people know almost nothing about today. And perhaps that is what makes the ruins feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire advanced kingdoms once flourished in Africa long before much of recorded history modern people usually learn. Stone megastructures rising in the Ethiopian mountains, forgotten temples connected to ancient trade worlds, a civilization surviving high above the valleys before vanishing almost completely into silence. The ancient rock city forgotten by time. Hidden high in the cliffs of Crimea, beyond winding mountain roads and deep stone valleys, there exist the remains of an ancient city carved directly into the rock itself. Stone houses cling to the edges of cliffs, hidden chambers disappear into mountainsides, ancient walls overlook endless valleys beneath cold skies, and scattered across the plateau, the ruins of a forgotten civilization still remain suspended above the world below. The place is known as Chufut Kale, and even today, the abandoned rock city remains one of the most haunting lost settlements in Eastern Europe, because this was not simply a fortress. It was an entire city hidden among the mountains and slowly erased by time. Chufut Kale lies in the Crimean peninsula near the ancient town of Bakhchisarai. The landscape feels isolated immediately. Steep cliffs rise above narrow valleys. Fog drifts across rocky hills beneath changing skies, and hidden atop a high limestone plateau. The ruined city suddenly appears like something abandoned centuries ago and never touched again. The location alone feels defensive by nature. Cliffs protect the plateau on multiple sides, making access difficult and dangerous. Ancient builders understood immediately that the mountain itself could become a fortress. Over centuries, walls, gates, homes, temples, and cave chambers transformed the isolated plateau into a thriving city suspended above the valleys. Historians believe the settlement existed for many centuries under different civilizations and rulers. Byzantine influence, Tatar influence, Karate Jewish communities. Multiple cultures passed through the stone city across history, leaving traces behind within the cliffs themselves. The name Chufut Kale roughly translates to Jewish fortress, though the city carried different names during earlier periods. Its long history became layered into the mountain itself. The cave structures deepen the mystery enormously. Entire rooms were carved directly into limestone cliffs, storage chambers, prayer spaces, living quarters, hidden passageways disappearing into darkness beneath the city walls. Some cave openings overlook terrifying drops into the valleys below. Others remain hidden behind broken stone corridors and ruined entrances. Walking through the site today feels almost surreal emotionally. The city appears frozen between civilization and abandonment. The atmosphere surrounding Chufut Kale feels deeply haunting, especially during evening. Wind moves through empty stone streets. Grass grows between collapsed walls, and because the plateau sits high above the surrounding landscape, silence dominates everything except distant echoes from the valleys below. The isolation creates a strange emotional effect. The ruins feel detached from the modern world entirely, as though the city still exists somewhere outside ordinary time. The defensive walls remain visible even now. Ancient gates once controlled the narrow entrance into the plateau city. Attackers approaching the fortress would have faced steep climbs beneath defenders positioned high above the cliffs for centuries. The mountain settlement survived because nature itself protected it. The city also contained religious sites connected to the Karate Jewish community that later inhabited the fortress. Ancient prayer houses and sacred spaces still remain among the ruins. That detail deepens the emotional atmosphere enormously. Generations of people once built entire spiritual lives within the isolated mountain city before eventually vanishing into history. The wells and water systems reveal extraordinary adaptation to the harsh environment. Living atop a rocky plateau required careful management of resources and survival. Ancient inhabitants carved systems directly into the stone to collect and preserve water. Without those systems, life on the mountain would have been impossible. Everything about Chufut depended on human ingenuity merging with the landscape itself. But eventually, the city declined. Trade routes shifted. Political powers changed. Modern settlements expanded elsewhere. And slowly, the rock city emptied. Families left the plateau. Buildings collapsed. Wind and weather reclaimed the abandoned streets beneath centuries of silence. Today, only ruins remain watching over the valleys exactly where generations once lived, hidden among the cliffs. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden tunnels still connect Chufut to underground chambers beneath the surrounding mountains. Others imagined lost treasure buried somewhere within sealed cave rooms abandoned centuries ago. A few even claimed the city preserved traces of civilizations far older than recorded history hidden beneath the visible ruins. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the site remains extraordinary. Few places combine natural geography and human architecture so dramatically. The city feels less built upon the mountain and more carved directly into its soul. Perhaps that is what makes Chufut feel so haunting. Not treasure, not legends, but the realization that entire human worlds can disappear almost completely while stone quietly remembers everything. A rock city above the valleys, a forgotten civilization hidden among cliffs, a mountain fortress abandoned beneath endless skies and silence. Even today, the winds still move through the ruins of Chufut exactly as they did centuries ago. The cave chambers still open into darkness beneath the cliffs, and somewhere high above the valleys of Crimea, the ancient rock city still waits carved into the limestone plateau, exactly where forgotten generations built it long ago, silent beneath stone, shadow, and the endless passing of time. The fortress hanging above the North Sea, high above the freezing waters of Scotland, balanced on the edge of towering sea cliffs, there stands a fortress so isolated and so dangerous that it almost feels impossible anyone could have survived there at all. Ancient stone walls rise directly from black rock above crashing waves. Narrow pathways twist toward giant gates suspended over the sea, and beyond the cliffs, the North Sea stretches endlessly beneath cold grey skies and violent storms. The place is known as Donota Castle, and even today, its ruined fortress remains one of the most haunting strongholds ever built in the ancient world. Because this was not simply a castle, it was a kingdom hanging above the ocean itself. Donota Castle stands on the northeastern coast of Scotland near Stonehaven. The landscape feels dramatic immediately. Steep cliffs plunge hundreds of feet into dark water below. Cold wind moves constantly across the headland. Waves crash violently against jagged rocks beneath the fortress walls, and isolated from the mainland by deep ravines, the castle almost appears detached from the ordinary world entirely. Only a single narrow pathway connects the fortress to land, a steep twisting route climbing toward the gates between cliffs and sea. From a defensive perspective, the location was nearly perfect. From a human perspective, it feels terrifying. Long before the visible ruins appeared, ancient people already recognized the strategic power of the cliffs. Historians believe fortifications may have existed there for over 1,000 years. The headland naturally became a place of defense, refuge, and survival surrounded by ocean on nearly every side. Over centuries, Donota evolved into one of Scotland's most important fortresses. Kings visited the castle, armies attacked it, political prisoners vanished inside its walls, and during some of Scotland's darkest moments, the fortress became the final guardian of treasures the nation could not afford to lose. The atmosphere surrounding Donota deepens the mystery enormously, especially during storms. Fog rolls across the cliffs from the North Sea, rain lashes against broken towers, and because the fortress sits so exposed above the ocean, every sound becomes amplified by wind and crashing water. Standing near the edge creates the strange sensation of existing between land and sea at the very end of the world. The ruins themselves feel deeply cinematic. Broken towers rise against endless skies. Collapsed halls overlook violent waves below. Grass moves across ancient courtyards where soldiers and rulers once walked centuries ago, and everywhere, the sea surrounds the fortress like a living wall. The castle also carries an enormous history of violence, sieges, executions, betrayal, war. One of the darkest places within Dunatar became known as the Whig's Vault, a cramped underground prison chamber where religious prisoners were once confined under horrific conditions during the 17th century. Cold stone walls, minimal light, almost no escape. Some prisoners died inside the darkness beneath the fortress itself. Even today, visitors describe the underground chamber as one of the most unsettling spaces in Scotland. The emotional atmosphere feels heavy, as though suffering remained trapped within the stone somehow. But perhaps the most famous moment in Dunotar's history came during the English Civil War. The honours of Scotland, the Scottish crown jewels, were hidden inside the fortress to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Oliver Cromwell's forces surrounded the castle. If the fortress fell, Scotland's royal symbols might be destroyed forever. Yet somehow, before the castle surrendered, the crown jewels vanished. For centuries, legends spread about how the treasures escaped. Some stories claimed they were lowered secretly down the cliffs beneath cover of darkness. Others believed local women smuggled them through enemy lines hidden among ordinary supplies. The mystery transformed Dunotar into something larger than a fortress, a place guarding the final symbols of a kingdom above the sea. The cliffs themselves deepen the haunting atmosphere enormously. Seabirds circle constantly around the headland. Waves explode against black rock far below. And because the fortress hangs directly above enormous drops into the ocean, the castle almost appears suspended between sky and water, especially during sunset. The stone darkens beneath storm clouds while ocean mist rises through the ruins. For brief moments, the fortress almost seems alive again. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden tunnels connect Dunotar to secret caves beneath the cliffs. Others imagined lost treasure still buried somewhere inside the ruins after centuries of war and betrayal. A few even claimed spirits still walk the fortress at night. Prisoners, soldiers, and nobles unable to leave the cliffs where they died. Most historians reject the supernatural stories completely. Yet even skeptics admit Dunotar carries an unusually powerful atmosphere, partly because the environment itself feels so extreme. A fortress hanging above violent seas, a castle balanced against storm, wind, and stone. Perhaps that is what makes Dunotar feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that human beings once built entire worlds in places where nature itself constantly threatened to destroy them. A kingdom above the North Sea, a fortress at the edge of the cliffs, and somewhere along the storm-covered coast of Scotland. Dunotar Castle still stands above the crashing ocean, exactly where generations defended it centuries ago, silent beneath wind, fog, and the endless waves below. The desert fortress built in the middle of nowhere. Deep within the deserts of Uzbekistan, surrounded by endless emptiness and burning winds, there rises the shattered remains of a fortress so isolated that it almost feels impossible human beings ever survived there at all. Massive mud brick walls stand above barren plains. Ancient watchtowers overlook empty horizons, and hidden in the middle of nowhere, an entire desert stronghold still waits beneath the silence of the Central Asian sands. The place is known as Ayaz Kala, and even today, the abandoned fortress remains one of the most haunting lost strongholds along the ancient Silk Road world. Because this was not simply a fort, it was a civilization built against the desert itself. Ayaz Kala lies within the Kyzylkum Desert near the ancient region of Khwarezm, in modern-day Uzbekistan. The environment feels harsh immediately. Dry winds sweep endlessly across cracked earth. Summer heat burns beneath enormous skies, and beyond the fortress, the desert stretches so far that the horizon almost disappears into light and dust. Then suddenly, the ruins appear, giant walls rising from the empty plains like the remains of another world. The site actually consists of several ancient fortresses scattered across elevated hills overlooking the surrounding desert. The largest stronghold dominates the landscape even now. Massive defensive walls curve across the top of a rocky plateau. Ancient towers still stand against the sky despite centuries of erosion and collapse. And from above, the fortress almost resembles a giant ship stranded in a sea of sand. Historians believe the earliest sections of Ayaz Kala were built more than 2,000 years ago. At the time, the region formed part of the ancient Khwarezm civilization, a powerful culture surviving between deserts, rivers, and trade routes connecting Central Asia to the wider Silk Road world. Caravans carrying silk, spices, metals, and knowledge crossed nearby regions constantly, and isolated strongholds like Ayaz Kala became essential for protection and survival. The fortress itself reveals extraordinary engineering. Ancient builders constructed enormous mud brick walls capable of resisting attack and surviving brutal desert conditions. Towers projected outward, allowing defenders to watch approaching enemies across the plains from enormous distances. The elevated position gave the fortress strategic dominance over the surrounding landscape. Any invading army would have been visible long before reaching the walls, but perhaps most astonishing of all, people managed to create permanent life there. The desert surrounding Ayaz Kala feels almost uninhabitable. Water remained scarce, heat overwhelming, storms brutal. Yet generations lived inside the fortress, protected from the harsh world outside. The atmosphere surrounding the ruins today feels deeply haunting, especially near sunset. The desert glows red beneath fading light. Wind moves softly through collapsed corridors and broken walls, and because the fortress stands so isolated from modern civilization, silence dominates everything. The abandoned towers almost feel frozen outside ordinary time. The interior deepens the mystery enormously. Narrow passageways wind through collapsed chambers hidden inside the fortress walls. Storage rooms once held supplies necessary for survival during sieges. Defensive corridors forced attackers into controlled paths where defenders could trap them. Ancient builders designed the stronghold carefully, understanding that survival depended completely on preparation and isolation. The emotional effect becomes strange while walking through the ruins. You realize entire communities once lived there. Families, soldiers, merchants, children growing up inside fortress walls surrounded by endless desert. Then suddenly, all of it vanished. Empires shifted, trade routes changed, civilizations collapsed, and slowly, the fortress emptied while the desert reclaimed the stone and mud brick beneath centuries of silence. The surrounding landscape deepens the loneliness enormously. No forests, no rivers nearby, only vast open plains beneath giant skies. Standing atop the fortress creates the strange sensation of existing far beyond the ordinary world, as though the ruins belong more to memory than history itself. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden treasure from lost Silk Road kingdoms still remains buried beneath Ayaz Kala, untouched for centuries. Others imagined secret underground tunnels stretching beneath the desert, connecting hidden chambers below the fortress. A few even claimed the stronghold belonged originally to civilizations older than recorded history later reused by the Khwarezm rulers. Most historians reject those ideas completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Ayaz Kala remains extraordinary. The survival of the fortress alone feels remarkable considering the harsh environment and immense age. The emotional power of the ruins comes partly from isolation. Ancient people built giant defensive worlds in absolute emptiness surrounded by hostile desert. A civilization surviving against nature itself. Perhaps that is what makes Ayaz Kala feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths. The ancient settlement rebuilt for 4,000 years. On the remote islands north of Scotland, where cold Atlantic winds sweep endlessly across the sea, there lies a settlement unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Stone houses buried beneath grassy cliffs. Ancient ruins layered directly atop older ruins. Entire civilizations stacked one above another beneath the ground across thousands of years, and hidden beside the freezing North Sea, a forgotten community continued rebuilding itself for nearly 4 millennia. The place is known as Jarlshof, and even today it remains one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites ever discovered in Northern Europe. Because this was not simply an ancient village, it was thousands of years of human history preserved in one single place. Jarlshof lies on the southern coast of the Shetland Islands, far north of mainland Scotland. The environment feels harsh immediately. Cold wind moves constantly across the cliffs. Grey ocean waves crash beneath endless skies, and beyond the settlement, the North Sea stretches toward distant northern waters and Arctic storms. Life there was never easy. Yet somehow, generation after generation continued returning to the exact same place for nearly 4,000 years. The ruins themselves reveal something astonishing. Jarlshof is not one settlement. It is many settlements layered together across time. Bronze Age homes, Iron Age villages, Pictish structures, Viking longhouses, medieval farmsteads, civilizations rising, collapsing and rebuilding directly atop one another while centuries passed beside the sea. Walking through the site today feels almost surreal emotionally. One doorway belongs to one era, the next wall hides a civilization hundreds of years older beneath it. Human history folds inward upon itself there. The earliest occupation dates back roughly 4,000 years. Ancient Bronze Age settlers built simple homes near the coast long before written history reached the islands. Those first communities survived by fishing, farming, and adapting to brutal northern conditions. Then, over centuries, new people arrived. Iron Age builders expanded the settlement into something larger and more sophisticated. Massive stone structures appeared. Circular defensive towers known as brochs rose across parts of Scotland during this period. At Jarlshof, one such broch once dominated the landscape before eventually collapsing into ruin itself. The atmosphere surrounding the site feels deeply ancient, especially during fog or evening. Wind echoes through broken stone corridors, grass moves between collapsed walls, and because every layer of the settlement belonged to different civilizations separated by centuries, the ruins create the strange sensation of countless forgotten lives overlapping across time. The Viking period deepens the mystery enormously. Norse settlers eventually reached the Shetland Islands during the early medieval era. At Jarlshof, Viking families built longhouses directly beside the ruins of civilizations already ancient even to them. Imagine living among stone ruins without fully understanding who created them centuries earlier. That detail feels haunting emotionally. Entire worlds forgotten while new generations unknowingly inherited their remains. The longhouses themselves reveal extraordinary adaptation to the harsh environment. Thick stone walls protected against freezing Atlantic winds. Low ceilings conserved heat. Storage rooms preserved food during brutal winters. Every detail of life there depended on survival against the sea and weather. The people of Jarlshof understood the landscape completely because they had no choice. The isolation of the Shetland Islands shaped everything. Storms could cut communities off from the outside world for long periods. The ocean both sustained and threatened life constantly. Yet despite hardship, people remained, century after century. The discovery of Jarlshof itself feels almost accidental. Coastal erosion gradually exposed buried ruins beneath the cliffs until archaeologists realized enormous layers of history existed beneath the ground. The sea that once sustained the settlement eventually revealed it again to the modern world. And even now, erosion continues threatening sections of the ancient site. The same ocean surrounding Jarlshof for thousands of years still shapes its fate today. The emotional power of the ruins comes partly from continuity. Unlike isolated monuments built during one moment in history, Jarlshof preserves endless cycles of ordinary human existence. Families living beside the sea, children growing up among stone walls, generations rebuilding homes after storms, hardship and change, then disappearing into history while others arrived and began again. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden chambers still remained buried beneath unexplored sections of the settlement. Others imagined ancient rituals occurring there long before the Vikings arrived. A few even claimed the site preserved traces of forgotten northern civilizations erased completely from recorded history. Most historians reject those ideas completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Jarlshof remains extraordinary. Few places on Earth preserve such an uninterrupted sequence of human habitation across so many eras. The ruins reveal something powerful about humanity itself. Civilizations change, empires rise and collapse, languages disappear, yet people continue rebuilding their lives in the same landscapes generation after generation, stone walls becoming foundations for new worlds endlessly repeated beside the sea. Perhaps that is what makes Jarlshof feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that countless forgotten people once stood exactly where modern visitors stand now, staring out across the cold northern ocean, wondering what the future might become. And somewhere along the storm-covered cliffs of the Shetland Islands, the ancient settlement of Jarlshof still rests beside the North Sea, exactly where human beings rebuilt their lives for 4,000 years beneath wind, stone, and endless grey skies. The pyramid designed to amplify sound. Hidden deep within the jungles of Mexico, surrounded by ancient stone ruins and the echoes of forgotten ceremonies, there stands a pyramid so strange that even sound behaves differently around it. A giant stepped structure rising above the forest canopy, massive stairways climbing toward the sky, and beneath the pyramid, whispers, echoes, and strange acoustic effects that continue confusing visitors even today. The place is known as Uxmal, and even now, many researchers believe the ancient builders understood sound, architecture, and human perception far more deeply than we once imagined. Because this was not simply a pyramid, it may have been a machine built to control sound itself. Uxmal lies in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. The landscape feels ancient immediately. Dense jungle surrounds massive stone structures hidden among trees and vines. Heat rises from the earth beneath endless skies, and emerging from the forest, the ancient city appears like the remains of another civilization swallowed slowly by nature. Uxmal was one of the great cities of the Maya world, a powerful ceremonial center flourishing more than 1,000 years ago, long before European arrival in the Americas. The city contained palaces, temples, courtyards, pyramids, and sacred structures built with astonishing precision. But among all its monuments, one structure became especially mysterious: the Pyramid of the Magician. Unlike many traditional pyramids with straight geometric forms, this structure rises with unusual curves and steep angles, giving it an almost unnatural appearance against the jungle skyline. The pyramid dominates the city. Massive stairways ascend sharply toward temple chambers high above the plaza below. The structure feels imposing emotionally, almost alive somehow. But the deeper researchers studied the pyramid, the stranger it became. Visitors standing near the base often notice unusual acoustic effects. Claps, voices, and footsteps echo strangely around the structure. Certain sounds bounce back distorted or amplified beneath the stone stairways. Some researchers discovered that hand claps near Maya pyramids can create echoes resembling bird calls, especially the sacred Quetzal bird important within Maya belief systems. At Uxmal, the effects feel particularly eerie. Sound behaves unpredictably around the giant stone structure. Whispers carry farther than expected. Echoes return strangely altered, and beneath the towering stairways, the pyramid almost appears to answer back. The atmosphere surrounding Uxmal deepens the mystery enormously, especially during early morning or sunset. Fog sometimes moves through the jungle ruins beneath changing light. Bird calls echo between ancient courtyards, and because many structures remain partially hidden among trees, the city feels suspended between nature and civilization itself. The Pyramid of the Magician also became connected to ancient legends. According to Maya folklore, the structure was built in a single night by a dwarf possessing supernatural powers after emerging mysteriously from an egg. The story sounds mythical now, yet emotionally, standing before the pyramid makes the legend strangely understandable. The architecture feels beyond ordinary human scale. Ancient builders somehow created towering ceremonial structures with remarkable engineering precision centuries before modern technology existed. The city itself reveals extraordinary understanding of astronomy, geometry, and environmental design. Buildings align with celestial events. Courtyards channel movement and sound intentionally. Stone surfaces reflect light and heat with surprising sophistication. The Maya were not simply constructing monuments. They were shaping experiences, manipulating atmosphere, perhaps even manipulating emotion itself through architecture and acoustics together. The pyramid chambers deepen the mystery further. Narrow passageways lead toward hidden interior spaces within the structure. Ancient rituals likely unfolded there beneath torchlight and echoing stone ceilings. Priests speaking from elevated temple platforms may have sounded amplified or transformed to crowds gathered below. That possibility changes the emotional meaning of the architecture completely. The pyramid may not only have looked powerful, it may have sounded powerful too. Over time, stranger. Theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed Uxmal's builders possessed lost acoustic knowledge capable of influencing human consciousness through sound frequencies. Others imagined hidden chambers beneath the pyramid still sealed beneath the jungle floor. A few even claimed the structure functioned as an ancient energy device because of its unusual echoes and geometry. Most historians reject those ideas completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits Maya architecture demonstrates extraordinary sophistication. The builders clearly understood how space, sound, light, and ceremony interacted emotionally within sacred environments. Perhaps that is what makes Uxmal feel so haunting. Not supernatural myths, not hidden treasure, but the realization that ancient civilizations may have understood the human mind and senses far more deeply than modern people often assume. A pyramid rising above the jungle, stone stairways amplifying echoes across forgotten plazas, a sacred city where architecture itself became part of ritual and mystery. Even today, the sounds of Uxmal still echo through the ruins exactly where Maya builders shaped the ancient city more than 1,000 years ago, hidden beneath jungle shadows, stone, and the endless memory of the ceremonies that once filled the pyramid with voices from another world. The burned fortress above Mexico's desert. High above the deserts of northern Mexico, on a rocky hill surrounded by silence and dry wind, there stand the blackened ruins of a fortress city abandoned centuries ago after a mysterious fire consumed nearly everything. Massive stone walls rise above the desert valleys, ancient stairways climb toward ruined ceremonial platforms, and scattered across the hilltop, burned remains still rest exactly where an entire civilization suddenly disappeared into smoke, ash, and silence. The place is known as La Quemada, and even today, archaeologists still debate who built this strange fortress city, and why it ended in flames high above the desert. Because this was not simply a settlement, it was a stronghold built for survival in a dangerous forgotten world. La Quemada lies in the Mexican state of Zacatecas, surrounded by harsh semi-desert landscapes and rocky hills. The environment feels isolated immediately. Dry wind moves endlessly across cactus-covered plains. Stone ridges rise above the valleys beneath enormous skies. And standing high above the landscape, the ruins appear almost like the remains of a mountain kingdom lost far from ordinary history. The name La Quemada means the burned one, a name given because evidence throughout the site suggests the city suffered a massive destructive fire sometime in the distant past. Blackened stone, burn marks, signs of sudden violence and collapse. Something catastrophic unquestionably happened there, but nobody fully knows exactly why. The scale of the fortress feels astonishing emotionally. Ancient builders constructed enormous defensive walls directly across the hilltops. Massive terraces and stairways connected ceremonial plazas and elevated structures overlooking the surrounding desert. The city appears designed not only for ritual and trade, but also for defense. Historians believe La Quemada flourished roughly between 300 and 1200 CE. Yet unlike famous civilizations such as the Maya or Aztecs, the people who built the fortress remain partly mysterious even today. Researchers still debate which culture controlled the city and what role it played within ancient Mexico. Some believe it served as a major trade center, linking northern and central regions. Others think it functioned primarily as a military fortress protecting territory during violent periods of conflict. The defensive systems deepen the mystery enormously. Steep stairways forced visitors through narrow approaches beneath towering walls. Elevated platforms provided wide visibility across the desert plains. Certain sections of the fortress feel almost intimidating even now. The city was built to dominate the landscape physically and psychologically. The atmosphere surrounding La Quemada feels deeply haunting, especially during sunset. The desert glows orange and red beneath fading light. Wind moves through ruined corridors and broken plazas, and because the fortress stands isolated above the surrounding valleys, silence dominates everything except distant echoes across the hills. The burned remains create an even darker emotional atmosphere. Imagine ancient fires consuming the hilltop city while smoke rose into the desert sky centuries ago. What happened there? War, Internal collapse? Ritual destruction? Nobody knows for certain. Some archaeologists believe conflict played a major role in the fortress's downfall. The northern frontier regions of ancient Mexico often experienced raids, migration, and instability. La Quemada may have existed in a dangerous world where survival depended entirely upon defense and control of territory. The city's elevated location suggests constant awareness of threat from the surrounding landscape. The ceremonial architecture deepens the mystery further. Large plazas, columned halls, and pyramid-like platforms suggest important rituals unfolded there. The builders combined military strength with spiritual symbolism, creating a city that felt both sacred and defensive at the same time. That combination gives La Quemada an unusually powerful atmosphere. A fortress and ceremonial centre fused together above the desert. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed La Quemada connected to the legendary lost city of Chicamostoc, the mythical place of seven caves from ancient Mesoamerican tradition. Others imagined hidden tunnels and chambers still buried beneath the hilltop ruins untouched since the fire. A few even claimed the fortress belonged to a forgotten civilization, erased almost completely from official history after catastrophe destroyed the city. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits La Quemada remains partly mysterious. The identity of its builders, the scale of its political power, and the exact cause of its destruction continue debated even today. Perhaps that is what makes the fortress feel so haunting. Not treasure, not supernatural legends, but the realization that entire civilizations can rise, burn, and disappear while leaving behind only broken stone and unanswered questions. A fortress above the desert, a city consumed by fire, a forgotten stronghold watching silently across the valleys long after its people vanished into history. Even today, the winds still move across the burned ruins of La Quemada exactly as they did centuries ago. The blackened walls still rise above the Mexican desert, and somewhere among the silent hilltops of Zacatecas, the ancient fortress still waits beneath stone, shadow, and the endless memory of the fire that destroyed it long ago, the largest mud brick city ever built. Along the northern coast of Peru, where dry desert winds move beside the Pacific Ocean, there once stood a city so enormous that ancient travellers believed it could never disappear. Massive walls stretched across the desert for miles, labyrinths of corridors twisted between giant ceremonial compounds, and hidden behind towering mud-brick fortresses. One of the greatest civilizations in South America built an empire from Earth itself. The place was known as Chan Chan, and even today, its abandoned ruins remain the largest mud-brick city ever constructed on Earth. Because this was not simply a city, it was an entire desert kingdom carved from clay, sand, and silence. Chan Chan lies near the modern city of Trujillo in northern Peru. The landscape feels strange immediately. Dry desert plains stretch toward the Pacific beneath pale skies. Almost no rain falls there. Wind moves softly across the empty earth, and rising from the desert, enormous walls and ruined compounds emerge like the remains of another world slowly dissolving back into sand. The scale becomes overwhelming immediately. At its height, Chan Chan covered nearly 8 square miles. Historians believe tens of thousands of people once lived within its walls. The city served as the capital of the Chimu civilization, a powerful empire ruling large parts of coastal Peru before the rise of the Inca. Everything about Chan Chan feels enormous emotionally. Huge ceremonial plazas, massive storage complexes, labyrinth-like passageways, towering walls decorated with intricate carvings of fish, birds, waves, and geometric symbols connected to the ocean and nature. And most astonishing of all, nearly the entire city was built from mud brick. Ancient builders shaped millions of adobe bricks from earth and water, creating one of the largest architectural achievements in the ancient Americas. The atmosphere surrounding the ruins feels deeply haunting, especially during evening. Long shadows stretch across abandoned corridors. Wind moves through silent courtyards exactly where rulers, priests, and workers once walked centuries ago. And because the city stands partially swallowed by desert erosion, Chan Chan almost feels like a fading memory struggling to survive against time itself. The city itself was carefully organized. Large walled compounds likely belonged to elite rulers and royal families. Inside those compounds existed ceremonial spaces, burial areas, storage rooms, and restricted chambers hidden behind enormous walls. The labyrinth design may have controlled movement through the city, intentionally allowing rulers to separate sacred and political spaces from ordinary life. Walking through the ruins today feels strangely disorienting. Corridors twist unexpectedly. Walls block the horizon. Certain pathways suddenly lead into giant empty plazas surrounded by silence. The city almost behaves like a maze. The Chimu civilization possessed extraordinary engineering skill. They developed irrigation systems allowing agriculture to survive within the harsh desert environment. Canals carried water across dry plains, transforming sections of the coast into productive farmland. Without those systems, a giant urban civilization like Chan could never have existed. The people who built the city mastered survival against one of the driest environments on Earth. The ocean played a major spiritual role within Chimu culture. Many wall carvings depict waves, fish, seabirds, and marine symbolism repeating endlessly across the compounds. The Pacific Ocean gave life to the civilization through fishing and trade, yet it also represented danger and unpredictability. Some researchers believe climate disasters connected to El Niño events may have damaged parts of the Chimu world long before the city finally fell, but eventually, another empire arrived. In the 15th century, the expanding Inca Empire conquered the Chimu civilization. Historical records suggest Chan surrendered after long resistance. The Inca absorbed the kingdom into their growing empire and carried away many of its treasures and craftsmen. Then later, Spanish conquest shattered the remaining structures of the ancient world entirely. Slowly, the giant mud brick city declined into ruin beneath desert wind and centuries of erosion. The fragility of mud brick deepens the emotional atmosphere enormously. Unlike stone monuments surviving almost unchanged, Chan constantly erodes. Walls soften, details fade. The desert slowly reclaims the city grain by grain. That gives the ruins an unusual sadness, a giant civilization literally dissolving back into the earth from which it was built. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden royal tombs and treasures still remain buried beneath unexplored compounds within Chan. Others imagined secret underground chambers hidden beneath the labyrinth-like city. A few even claimed the massive layout encoded astronomical or spiritual knowledge lost with the Chimu civilization itself. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits large portions of Chan remain only partially explored. The desert still hides countless secrets beneath collapsed walls and buried courtyards. Perhaps that is what makes Chan feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that one of the greatest cities ever built in the ancient Americas could rise from the desert, dominate an empire, and then slowly disappear back into sand while the modern world barely remembers it now. A kingdom built from Earth itself, a mud brick city larger than many modern towns, a forgotten empire fading beneath the Peruvian desert sky. Even today, the winds still move through the ruins of Chan exactly as they did centuries ago. The giant walls still stand against the desert plains, and somewhere along the coast of Peru, the largest mud brick city ever built still waits beneath dust, shadow, and the endless memory of the civilization that once filled its endless corridors with life. The pyramid fortress lost beneath Iran's desert. Hidden deep within the deserts of Iran, far from modern cities and surrounded by endless plains of dust and heat, there rises the shattered remains of one of the oldest sacred megastructures on Earth. Massive mud brick walls stretch across the barren landscape, ancient temples rise above ruined courtyards, and at the centre of the forgotten city, a giant stepped pyramid still stands beneath the burning desert sun, exactly where it was built more than 3,000 years ago. The place is known as Chogha Zanbil, and even today, it remains one of the most mysterious and extraordinary ancient cities ever discovered in the Middle East. Because this was not simply a temple, it was an entire sacred fortress built around a colossal pyramid hidden in the middle of nowhere. Chogha Zanbil lies in southwestern Iran near the ancient lands of Elam. The landscape feels isolated immediately. Dry winds sweep endlessly across the plains, the desert stretches beneath enormous skies, and rising unexpectedly from the emptiness, the giant ruins appear almost like a lost city swallowed by time itself. At the heart of the site stands the ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid built thousands of years before many famous medieval kingdoms even existed. Ancient stairways once climbed towards sacred upper levels, where priests performed rituals high above the desert below. The structure originally rose far taller than what survives today. Even in ruins, the scale feels overwhelming emotionally. The ziggurat dominates the landscape like the remains of another civilization entirely. Historians believe Chogha Zanbil was built around 1250 BCE by the Elamite king Untashnapirisha. At the time, the Elamite civilization rivaled powerful kingdoms across Mesopotamia and Persia. Trade routes crossed the region carrying goods, culture and warfare between ancient empires, and hidden beyond the rivers and deserts, Chogha Zanbil became one of the greatest religious centres of the ancient world. The city itself was carefully planned. Massive defensive walls surrounded sacred districts and temples. Inner compounds protected the central ziggurat. Shrines dedicated to different gods stood throughout the city. Everything was organised around ritual, power and divine authority. The atmosphere surrounding the ruins today feels deeply haunting, especially near sunset. The mud brick walls glow red beneath fading light. Wind moves softly across abandoned courtyards, and because the city stands isolated far from modern urban life, silence dominates everything. The ancient pyramid rises above the plains exactly where priests and rulers once walked thousands of years ago. The engineering itself feels astonishing. Ancient builders created the giant ziggurat using millions of mud bricks shaped and stacked beneath brutal desert heat. Some bricks still preserve inscriptions stamped into them by the builders themselves, messages from another civilization surviving after more than 3,000 years. The structure also contained advanced water systems for the time. Canals and reservoirs helped sustain life in the harsh environment surrounding the sacred city. Without careful planning, survival there would have been impossible. The Elamites understood architecture and environmental adaptation with remarkable sophistication. But perhaps the most mysterious part of Chogha Zanbil is how suddenly its story ended. Not long after the city reached its height, disaster arrived. Historical records suggest the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal attacked and devastated the region during military campaigns against Elam. The sacred city was damaged and eventually abandoned. Afterward, the desert slowly reclaimed the temples and walls beneath centuries of dust and silence. Entire civilizations rose and collapsed while the forgotten ziggurat remained buried beneath the earth. The emotional power of Chogha Zanbil comes partly from age. This structure already stood ancient while later empires were still centuries from existing. The pyramid watched history unfold across millennia. Kingdoms vanished, religions changed, languages disappeared, yet the sacred fortress survived in silence beneath the desert sky. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden chambers still remain sealed deep within the ziggurat untouched since antiquity. Others imagined lost treasures and sacred artifacts buried beneath collapsed temples inside the ancient city. A few even claimed Chogha Zanbil preserved forgotten astronomical knowledge connected to the stars and heavens above the desert. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the site remains extraordinary. Chogha Zanbil preserves one of the best surviving ziggurats anywhere in the world and offers rare insight into a civilization many people know almost nothing about today. Perhaps that is what makes the ruins feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire advanced civilizations once flourished in places modern people barely remember now. Sacred cities hidden in deserts, gigantic pyramids built for forgotten gods, a fortress of mud brick and ritual standing silently while thousands of years passed around it. Even today, the winds still move across the ruins of Chogha Zanbil exactly as they did in the ancient world. The giant ziggurat still rises above the Iranian plains, and somewhere beneath the desert sky, the sacred pyramid fortress still waits surrounded by silence, shadow, and the endless memory of the civilization that built it more than 3,000 years ago. The stone chambers, hidden beneath Ireland's hills, beneath the green hills of Ireland, hidden below layers of earth and ancient grass. There are chambers so old that they were already ancient before the pyramids of Egypt were built. Long stone passageways disappear into darkness beneath massive burial mounds. Hidden chambers rest silently below the landscape untouched by sunlight for thousands of years, and carved into the ancient stones, Strange symbols still remain whose meanings may never be fully understood. The place is known as Douth, and even today, the hidden passage tomb beneath Ireland's hills remains one of the most mysterious prehistoric structures in Europe. Because this was not simply a tomb. It was a sacred underground world built for the dead long before recorded history began. Douth lies within the Boyne Valley in eastern Ireland. The landscape feels peaceful immediately. Rolling green hills stretch beneath grey skies. Mist moves softly across fields and rivers, and beneath one enormous grassy mound, an entire stone complex still survives hidden underground, exactly where prehistoric builders created it over 5,000 years ago. Douth forms part of the Bruna Boyne complex, alongside Newgrange and Noath, one of the greatest concentrations of prehistoric monuments anywhere in the world. Yet compared to its famous neighbours, Douth feels quieter, darker somehow, more mysterious. The mound itself appears almost natural from a distance, a giant grassy hill resting silently in the Irish countryside. But hidden beneath the earth, long stone corridors lead toward ancient burial chambers deep inside the mound. The scale feels astonishing emotionally. Ancient people transported enormous stones across the landscape, without metal tools, wheels, or modern machinery, then somehow aligned and constructed underground chambers capable of surviving more than 5,000 years beneath the hills. The passageways deepen the mystery enormously. Narrow stone corridors stretch inward through darkness beneath the mound. Cold air fills the chambers, ancient stones press close around the passage, and eventually, the tunnels open into hidden ceremonial spaces where the dead were once placed beneath the earth itself. The atmosphere underground feels deeply unsettling, silent, ancient, almost detached from ordinary time. The stones themselves carry strange carvings still visible today. Spirals, circles, geometric symbols cut into the rock by prehistoric hands thousands of years ago. The meaning of the symbols remains uncertain. Some researchers believe they may connect to astronomy, ritual, or spiritual beliefs surrounding death and rebirth. Others think the carvings represented sacred patterns understood only by the builders themselves, but no written explanation survives. Only the symbols remain watching silently from the stone. The alignment of Douth deepens the mystery further. Like other passage tombs in Ireland, the structure appears connected to the movement of the sun. During certain times of year, sunlight enters sections of the tomb in precise ways, suggesting ancient builders possessed remarkable understanding of astronomy and seasonal cycles. That realization changes the emotional meaning of the monument completely. This was not merely a burial place. It was a carefully designed sacred machine connected to the sky itself. Local legends surrounding Douth grew over centuries. Irish mythology often described the Boyne Valley as a place where the worlds of the living and the dead touched. Ancient spirits, supernatural beings, and forgotten gods became connected to the landscape. One legend claimed Douth's construction ended suddenly after a magical disaster caused darkness to fall across the land. The unfinished atmosphere surrounding parts of the mound only strengthened those stories. The emotional power of the site comes partly from age. Douth already stood ancient, while later civilizations elsewhere were still centuries away from rising. Empires had not yet formed. Most famous monuments did not yet exist. Yet prehistoric communities in Ireland were already building massive underground ceremonial structures aligned with celestial events. That reality feels almost impossible emotionally. The atmosphere surrounding the mound deepens during evening. Wind moves softly through the grass above the hidden chambers. Fog drifts. Across the Boyne Valley, beneath fading light, and somewhere beneath the hill, ancient stone corridors still remain sealed in darkness, exactly where prehistoric people carried their dead thousands of years ago. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden chambers still remain undiscovered deep beneath Douth beyond the known passageways. Others imagined the symbols carved into the stones preserve forgotten knowledge from lost prehistoric civilizations. A few even claimed the mound connected spiritually to other ancient sites across Europe, through alignments and celestial systems modern people no longer understand. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits monuments like Douth reveal astonishing sophistication for prehistoric societies. The builders understood engineering, astronomy, ritual and landscape, with extraordinary precision long before written history began in Ireland. Perhaps that is what makes Doubt feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that human beings thousands of years ago already looked at the sky, the land, and death itself with remarkable complexity and imagination. Stone chambers hidden beneath grassy hills, sacred tunnels leading into darkness, a prehistoric world still sleeping beneath Ireland long after its builders vanished into history. The stone towers watching the Mediterranean Sea. On a quiet island in the Mediterranean, surrounded by blue water, rocky cliffs, and endless wind, there stand enormous stone towers older than many famous civilizations of the ancient world. Massive circular structures rise from grassy hills. Ancient walls overlook the sea from isolated plateaus, and scattered across the island, forgotten towers still watch silently toward the horizon, exactly as they did thousands of years ago. The place is Menorca, and even today, the mysterious Talayot stone towers remain one of the greatest prehistoric enigmas in the Mediterranean world. Because nobody fully knows why ancient people built so many giant towers across the island, or what they were truly meant for. Menorca lies off the eastern coast of Spain in the Balearic Islands. The landscape feels peaceful immediately. Rolling hills stretch toward rocky coastlines beneath warm skies. Olive trees and stone fields cover the countryside, and hidden among the quiet landscape, ancient megalithic ruins suddenly emerge from the earth like fragments of another civilization. The towers are known as Talayots, massive prehistoric stone structures built more than 3,000 years ago during the Bronze and Iron Ages. Some stand isolated on hilltops, others form part of larger ancient settlements surrounded by defensive walls and ceremonial spaces. The scale feels astonishing emotionally. Gigantic limestone blocks stacked carefully without mortar, circular towers rising above the landscape with surprising engineering precision. And unlike many ruins from the ancient world, the Talayots still dominate the horizon even now. Historians believe the prehistoric Talayotic culture built these structures long before Roman conquest reached the islands. Yet much about the civilization remains mysterious. No surviving written records fully explain their beliefs, rulers, or purpose behind the towers. Only stone remains, silent beneath centuries of Mediterranean wind. The atmosphere surrounding the Talayots feels deeply ancient, especially during sunset. Golden light moves across the island while shadows gather around the towers. Wind echoes softly between the stones, and because many ruins stand isolated from modern towns, silence dominates everything except distant waves from the sea below. Standing beside the towers creates a strange emotional effect. The structures feel watchful somehow, as though they were built not merely for shelter, but for observation. Many Talayots occupy elevated positions overlooking coastlines, valleys, and open land. That detail deepens the mystery enormously. Some researchers believe the towers functioned as defensive lookout points protecting communities from invasion. Others think they carried ceremonial or political significance connected to power and ritual. A few may have served multiple purposes simultaneously. The truth remains uncertain. The surrounding settlements reveal surprisingly sophisticated organization. Ancient stone houses, storage areas, gathering spaces, and walls surrounded many of the towers. The Talayotic people clearly formed structured communities capable of transporting and arranging enormous stone blocks across the island. That achievement alone required remarkable planning and labour for prehistoric societies. Some sites also contain strange ceremonial structures known as taulas, massive T-shaped stone monuments rising from enclosed ritual spaces. The taulas deepen the mystery even further. No one fully agrees what they were used for. Ceremonies, astronomical observation, religious worship, ancient rituals beneath the Mediterranean sky. The silence surrounding the ruins only makes the unanswered questions feel larger. The island itself contributed enormously to the atmosphere. Menorca feels isolated emotionally even now despite modern tourism. Ancient people living there would have existed surrounded constantly by sea and sky. The Mediterranean shaped every aspect of survival, trade, and belief. And perhaps the towers represented humanity's attempt to claim permanence against the endless horizon surrounding them. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed the Talayots connected to Atlantis or lost prehistoric Mediterranean civilizations erased before recorded history began. Others imagined hidden underground chambers still buried beneath, the towers untouched for thousands of years. A few even claimed the structures aligned with celestial events and ancient astronomical systems modern researchers no longer fully understand. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the Taliotic civilization remains partly mysterious. Large portions of their language, religion and social systems vanished long ago, leaving only stone monuments behind. Perhaps that is what makes the towers feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire prehistoric civilizations once flourished on quiet islands, modern people often overlook completely. Communities building giant stone monuments beside the sea, watchtowers rising above Mediterranean cliffs, a forgotten world surviving in silence long after its builders vanished into history. The giant stone gateway in the middle of the Pacific, on a remote island kingdom in the South Pacific, surrounded by endless ocean and volcanic cliffs, there stands a stone monument so enormous and so mysterious that early explorers could barely believe ancient people built it at all. Two giant upright stones towering toward the sky, a massive stone slab balanced across the top like a doorway for giants, and hidden among the quiet landscapes of Tonga, one of the greatest megalithic structures in the Pacific, still stands exactly where it was raised centuries ago. The place is known as Hayamonga, a Maui, and even today, nobody fully understands how ancient builders moved and positioned stones weighing dozens of tons on a small island surrounded by sea. Because this was not simply a monument, it was a giant stone gateway built at the edge of the world itself. Hayamonga Trilithon stands on the island of Tongatapu in the Kingdom of Tonga. The environment feels peaceful immediately. Palm trees move softly in the ocean wind. Waves crash gently against volcanic shores. And beneath warm tropical skies, the massive stone structure rises unexpectedly from the landscape like the remains of a forgotten civilization. The monument consists of 3 giant coral limestone slabs. 2 vertical pillars support a massive horizontal stone balanced across the top. The structure resembles a gigantic doorway or gateway standing alone against the Pacific sky. The scale feels astonishing emotionally. Each upright stone weighs many tons. The upper lintel alone may weigh more than 10 tons. Yet ancient Polynesian builders somehow transported and raised the stones centuries before modern machinery existed. That mystery still fascinates researchers today. Historians believe the structure was built sometime around the 13th century during the height of the ancient Tongan Maritime Empire. At that time, Tonga controlled vast sections of the Pacific through navigation, trade, and political influence stretching across distant islands. The ocean itself connected enormous worlds long before Europeans arrived in the region. And hidden among those islands, the rulers of Tonga created monumental stone architecture many people still know almost nothing about today. Local tradition connects the monument to the demigod Maui, a legendary figure across Polynesian mythology associated with strength, exploration, and supernatural power. According to some stories, Maui himself carried the stones into place. The legend reflects how emotionally impossible the structure must have seemed even to later generations. Because standing beneath the Trilithon today, human beings instinctively wonder the same thing. How did ancient people move something so massive? The atmosphere surrounding Hayamonga deepens the mystery enormously, especially during sunrise. Golden light moves across the stone gateway, while ocean wind echoes softly through the surrounding fields. The monument stands isolated beneath enormous skies facing the Pacific horizon, and because the structure appears so simple yet so monumental, it creates the strange sensation of hidden meaning waiting inside the stone itself. Researchers still debate the monument's true purpose. Some believe it functioned ceremonially as a royal gateway connected to sacred processions and political authority. Others think astronomical alignments may have played a role. Certain theories suggest the stones align with seasonal solar events, helping track the movement of the sun across the year. A few researchers believe the structure served multiple purposes simultaneously: political, spiritual, and astronomical together. The surrounding landscape also contains ancient pathways and other stone remains connected to Tonga's royal history. The Trilithon may once have formed part of a much larger ceremonial complex, mostly lost to time. That possibility deepens the emotional atmosphere enormously. a giant stone gateway surviving after the larger world around it vanished. The Pacific setting makes the mystery even more powerful. Unlike stone monuments connected to large continents and empires, Tonga existed isolated among endless ocean. Ancient Polynesian navigators crossed vast distances using stars, currents, and memory alone. The civilization capable of exploring the Pacific also built megalithic monuments from giant stone. That realization feels extraordinary emotionally. The ocean world modern people often underestimate once contained sophisticated kingdoms and remarkable engineering traditions of its own. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed Hayamonga preserved traces of lost Pacific civilizations older than recorded Polynesian history. Others imagined hidden chambers or sacred relics buried beneath the monument untouched for centuries. A few even claimed the giant stone gateway connected spiritually to other megalithic structures across the world through forgotten ancient knowledge. Most historians reject those ideas completely, yet even mainstream archaeology admits the monument remains extraordinary. The transportation and placement of the stones required immense organisation, labour, and engineering understanding, and much about ancient Tonga still remains only partially understood, compared to other famous civilizations. Perhaps that is what makes Hayamonga feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that advanced human societies once flourished across the Pacific Ocean, building giant monuments beneath tropical skies, while much of the modern world barely remembers them now. A stone gateway beside the sea, a forgotten kingdom of navigators and builders, a megalithic monument standing silently at the edge of the Pacific world, the ancient fortress hidden inside a cliff. High above the deserts of Arizona, carved directly into the side of a towering limestone cliff, there stands an ancient settlement so perfectly hidden that early explorers could barely believe people once lived there at all. Stone rooms suspended high above the canyon floor, ancient walls built into the mountain itself, and beneath the burning desert sun, a forgotten fortress still watches silently across the valley, exactly where its builders abandoned it centuries ago. The place is known as Montezuma's Castle, and even today, it remains one of the most mysterious cliff dwellings ever constructed in North America. Because this was not simply a village, it was an entire community hidden inside the rock itself. Montezuma's Castle lies in central Arizona near Beaver Creek. The landscape feels harsh immediately. Dry desert winds move across cactus-covered valleys. Towering cliffs rise above green patches fed by hidden water sources, and halfway up one giant limestone wall, the ancient structure suddenly appears almost invisible against the stone. That isolation protected it for centuries. The settlement sits nearly 90 feet above the canyon floor, built directly into a natural alcove within the cliff. From below, the fortress seems almost impossible to reach, and perhaps that was exactly the point. Historians believe the site was built by the Sinagua people sometime around 900 years ago. The Sinagua civilization survived across the deserts and highlands of the American Southwest long before European arrival. They farmed, traded and adapted carefully to one of the harshest environments in North America. Water controlled everything. Without reliable springs and streams, survival was impossible. The cliffs surrounding Beaver Creek offered natural protection and access to nearby water at the same time. The structure itself deepens the mystery enormously. The cliff dwelling contains around 20 rooms built carefully from limestone blocks and wooden beams inside the rock alcove. Ancient builders somehow carried materials upward and constructed an elevated settlement protected by the mountain itself. The engineering feels astonishing emotionally, especially considering the age. No modern tools, no machinery, only human labour, planning, and survival instinct. The atmosphere surrounding Montezuma's castle feels deeply haunting, especially during evening. Shadows climb slowly across the cliff wall, wind moves through the canyon beneath endless desert skies, and because the structure remains suspended silently above the ground, it creates the strange feeling of a hidden world frozen outside ordinary time. The name itself carries historical confusion. Early European-American settlers mistakenly connected the ruins to the Aztec Emperor Montezuma, even though the structure had no connection to him at all. The name remained despite the misunderstanding. Yet, emotionally, the fortress still feels legendary, almost mythological. A hidden city carved into stone above the desert floor. The Sinagua people lived there for generations. Families slept inside the cliff chambers. Children grew up high above the canyon. Food, tools, and water were carried into the hidden settlement daily. And because the structure stood elevated above the valley, inhabitants could observe movement across the landscape while remaining difficult to attack. The desert environment shaped every detail of life. Summer heat became brutal. Water sources remained precious. Storms could transform dry ground into sudden floods. The builders understood the landscape completely because survival depended on it. The cliff itself became shelter from both enemies and nature. The emotional power of the site comes partly from abandonment. At some point during the 1400s, the Sinagua people left the settlement. Nobody knows the exact reason with certainty. Climate change, resource pressure, migration, conflict. Perhaps several causes combined together. But eventually, the cliff fortress fell silent while the desert continued around it. That unanswered disappearance deepens the mystery enormously. Entire communities vanished from the canyon, leaving only stone rooms behind, suspended above the earth. The preservation of the structure feels remarkable. Because the alcove protected the rooms from weather and erosion, large sections survived far, better than many ancient sites elsewhere. Standing below the cliff dwelling today creates an unusual emotional effect. The fortress does not feel ruined completely. It feels paused, as though the people living there might return at any moment. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed hidden tunnels and chambers still remained sealed deeper within the cliffs surrounding Montezuma's castle. Others imagined lost treasures and ceremonial artifacts abandoned by the Sinagua people somewhere inside unexplored sections of the canyon. A few even claimed the cliff dwelling aligned with celestial events and sacred desert landscapes connected to ancient spiritual traditions. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits many details about the Sinagua civilization remain uncertain. Large portions of their beliefs, language, and social systems vanished long ago. Only the stone fortress remains watching silently above the valley. Perhaps that is what makes Montezuma's castle feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire civilizations once adapted to environments modern people can barely imagine surviving within now. Communities hidden inside cliffs, families living above the desert floor, a forgotten world suspended between stone and sky. The stone fortress towers of a forgotten island kingdom. On the island of Sardinia, surrounded by the deep blue waters of the Mediterranean, there stand thousands of ancient stone towers scattered across hills, valleys, and lonely plains. Massive circular fortresses built from giant black stones, hidden chambers sealed inside thick walls, ancient stairways twisting upward into darkness, and across the island, the ruins of a civilization that vanished long before the rise of Rome still remain watching silently beneath the Mediterranean sky. The place is known as Nuraxi, and even today, it remains one of the most mysterious prehistoric megastructures ever built in Europe. Because this was not simply a tower, it was the centre of an entire lost island civilization. Nuraxi lies near the town of Barumini in Sardinia, Italy. The landscape feels peaceful immediately. Rolling hills stretch beneath warm skies, olive trees move softly in the wind, and rising unexpectedly from the earth, giant stone towers dominate the landscape like the remains of another age forgotten by history itself. The structure belongs to the Nuragic civilization, a mysterious Bronze Age culture that flourished on Sardinia more than 3,000 years ago, and across the island. They built thousands of giant stone towers known as nuraghes. No one knows exactly why. No surviving written language fully explains who they were, and much of their civilization disappeared long before historians could properly record it. Only the towers remained, silent beneath centuries of Mediterranean wind. Nuraxi is the greatest and most famous of them all. The scale feels astonishing emotionally. Enormous basalt stones stacked without mortar forming towering defensive walls, capable of surviving thousands of years. At the centre rises a giant main tower once standing far taller than it does today. Surrounding it, additional towers, walls, courtyards, chambers, and hidden passageways transformed the structure into a massive fortress complex. The engineering feels extraordinary. Ancient builders lifted and balanced gigantic stones long before modern machinery existed. The interior deepens the mystery enormously. Narrow stone stairways spiral upward through thick walls. Hidden chambers open inside the towers themselves. Long corridors disappear into shadow beneath the fortress, and because parts of the structure remain enclosed by massive stone blocks, the atmosphere inside feels ancient and strangely claustrophobic. Cold air fills the chambers even during hot Mediterranean afternoons. The fortress almost feels alive somehow. Historians believe Nuraxi may have functioned as a defensive stronghold, ceremonial centre, political hub, or perhaps all three together. The Nuragic people clearly organised large communities capable of monumental construction and complex planning. Villages surrounded many of the towers. Families lived, worked, traded, and survived beneath the protection of the giant stone fortress. Yet despite the scale of the civilization, much about them remains uncertain. That mystery gives Sardinia an unusually haunting atmosphere. Thousands of towers still stand across the island exactly where the Nuragic builders left them. Some hidden in forests, others isolated atop lonely hills. Entire landscapes filled with monuments from a civilization modern people barely understand today. The atmosphere surrounding Nuraxi deepens during sunset. Golden light moves across the ancient stones while shadows gather between the towers. Wind echoes softly through the corridors, and because the fortress rises from open countryside surrounded by silence, the ruins feel detached from ordinary time itself, almost like a forgotten world surviving quietly beneath the Mediterranean sky. The Nuragic civilization eventually declined long before the rise of the Roman Empire. New cultures arrived, trade networks changed, wars crossed the Mediterranean, and slowly, the ancient island kingdom faded into history. Yet the towers endured, massive stone monuments surviving while the people who built them vanished almost completely from memory. Over time, stranger theories inevitably appeared. Some people believed the Nuragas connected to Atlantis, or lost prehistoric civilizations erased before recorded history began. Others imagined hidden underground chambers and sacred treasures still buried, beneath Nuraxi untouched for thousands of years. A few even claimed the towers aligned with celestial systems and ancient astronomical knowledge modern researchers no longer fully understand. Most historians reject the more extreme theories completely. Yet even mainstream archaeology admits the Nuragic civilization remains partly mysterious. No one fully agrees why so many towers were built across Sardinia, or exactly how their society operated at its height. Perhaps that is what makes Nuraxi feel so haunting. Not treasure, not myths, but the realization that entire advanced civilizations can disappear almost completely while their monuments continue standing silently against time. A stone fortress kingdom in the middle of the Mediterranean. Giant towers rising above forgotten villages. A prehistoric world still watching across the hills of Sardinia long after its builders vanished into history.